welcome to yet another episode of Power People, where we feature the who's who of the music industry. And today we have with us a very popular name, Zabe Bangash. She is a singer songwriter whose music is popular across South Asia. Thank you, Zabe, for joining us.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. An honor.
Same here, and I have two reasons to do this interview. One, I love your music, and second, I really want to know about your music journey. Slightly, let me just begin this. When it comes to women and music, and also independent music, it's always a challenging space. Give me a little idea of the journey that has been for you. How has the journey panned out?
I mean, I've had a very lopsided kind of interaction with it because, music became a part of my life kind of almost without much deliberation. It was just always there. I heard a bunch of music growing up, which then I didn't realize was unusual for people in South Asia to be exposed to, obviously because I was a child. Then literally out of fun and out of a sense of togetherness and out of a sense of nostalgia, my cousin and we ended up making some songs in college when we were studying abroad. And then I don't know what happened, then like something else took over and we found ourselves in the midst of the industry. I was studying finance, she was studying computer science. And then, we came into this beautiful world and everybody really welcomed us with open arms. And, it felt almost like it literally was a fairy tale kind of, beginning to the industry. And so I never really had that struggle that, you hear people talk about. And to the point where I was almost wondering whether it even exists or if it's just, our attitude or whatever. But soon after we got in the industry, that's when I started becoming aware of these forces, because actually the toughest thing for a woman as an artist anywhere in the world is not to enter, especially if you're young. The toughest thing in the creative field for women, and especially music, I feel nowadays especially, is to stay. And to really stay based on your music. And that was a real struggle because, I don't have a very kind of rebellious kind of, perspective. I'm more a connector. I'm more like, someone who likes to kind of nurture and connect and communicate. I'm not there to like, dictate things or anything. So for me, I couldn't really be that rebel girl and I couldn't be like the big, goddess or anything. So image-wise, it becomes very difficult to get people to only concentrate on your journey as a musician. And that was very challenging. It was a work I was not ready for, the glamour of it, the politics of it, the cutthroatness of it. I'm not very competitive. So it was difficult. But I think what really helped me was my parents' support, my friends' support. I never really let go of what made me do my music. And slowly and steadily, we started getting back to, what we started with. So, yeah, of course, Hania and I went our separate ways around 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now, 12 years ago. So, yeah.
Right.
So that's
wonderful. That's a great thing to know. In this industry that is known for, has a certain perception, you had a smooth journey. That's a lot of blessings, on your side. Yeah.
Initially, yes. In the middle, no.
Right. I was reading that you grew up listening to pop and Western music, and of course, there's no formal, background in folk or classical music, and yet You are known to have redefined folk music, classical music. So, I mean, what would you attribute this to?
So, like I said, I grew up with a lot of different folk traditions in the house. So, because ethnically we are from the north, so there was a lot of Persian music, a lot of Turkey. Then my parents had lived in Turkey, so there was a lot of Turkish music that they brought, and they also kept up with what was happening. So like we used to get the top of the pops from the UK, we'd also get the top of the pops from Turkey.
Right.
So so as a man, so growing up, and of course there was Hindi film music always around. There was classical music, ghazal. So I mean, it was just like this one big mishmash, like you say khichdi, like it was like that growing up. So for me, it wasn't. I mean, people like to say that I was inventive or whatever, but it's just how it was just how I had tasted or how I had experienced all these traditions as one. So when I started creating music or bringing some of these lesser known traditions out there, I also heard them or understood them in context with so many others. And so that was easier for me. And it's true that I didn't have any classical training, but for the past 10 years, I have been learning music formally and classically also. So
Right. So, when we talk of South Asia, Indian influence, especially of Bollywood, is inescapable. What was your formative impression of the Indian music, especially the Bollywood, and then of course you became part of films like Madras Cafe, Fitur, Highway, and others. But what was your formative impression around Indian and especially Bollywood music?
well, it was my own. I didn't look at it as Bollywood music or, and I didn't feel look at it as an other music. And I loved it. I mean, the music that I grew up with, loved it rather. The music that I grew up with, the first song I heard my grandmother sing to me was a Bollywood song, if you want to call it that. It was a lori by Lata Mangeshkar called Dheere Se Aaja, and that was the lori she used to sing to us always. And so, I mean, that's what we did. We used to have these VHS cassettes of old um, Hindi music songs, Hindi film songs. And after dinner, we put them on, and all of us as a family, we just watched them for hours and hours and hours. And there were different kinds of volumes of like, Guru Dutt songs and Raj Kapoor songs. So,
Right.
but but I grew up a lot with. I must confess that I grew up a lot more with the classic years, like the 50s, 60s, 70s. That was the music that I heard the most, and I heard a lot of it. It was everywhere. It's always been a soundtrack to my life.
Right. And your music caters to a wide range of audience, and from cutting across from Urdu, Hindi, even other languages across South Asia. How do you, and yet it clicks. What is that secret sauce, that you, or the pulse of the audience that you really understand? How do you decide? Because it is pan, it cuts across cultures. How do you decide on your music?
It just has to feel. It just has to feel good to me. That's my only decision. And and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. But like I said, I don't really have. It just has to feel. It just has to feel good to me. If I'm convinced by it, then I feel pretty confident that someone out there will be. You know, so
Right.
that's how it is.
So in India, when we talk of independent music, we always say that there's so much challenge in that space, and music, unless you come to Bollywood and Bollywood gives you a platform, you are not discovered, or you are not even acknowledged. Till Bollywood gives you a platform. When we see this state of affairs, do you think anything's gonna change on the independent music front? Do we see it reviving, coming back as a strong genre? Are there forces at play already, according to you?
I mean, there's definitely a back and forth. Also another thing that the reason why Bollywood survives, or any big industry like Bollywood survives, is because Bollywood doesn't necessarily work with one genre, and it also doesn't only work with original music. Now we're discovering. As I was, working, I remember once I was working with my klezmer band and in Brooklyn, and Michael, who's my, who was my co-band leader, a friend, he was playing the beginning piece of Aja Sanam and I, on his clarinet, that he was playing that, and I turned around and I was so excited because I was all ready to sing along with him, and he just started playing something else, and I said, "This is a Bollywood song." He said, "No, it's an Italian folk song." So so there's like things from all over that have absorbed in it over the years. There's Russian traditions, there's folk traditions from all over South Asia, there's European music, Western music, American music. So I feel that Bollywood's existence does make it difficult for musicians to become superstars in the way that they do otherwise. They would without it, but it also helps them in many ways, because it does allow for different kinds of expression. If you become, the thing I've seen is that if you manage to do something on your own, then they want you. And I think that has become easier now with the coming of your own channels, your own YouTube channels, your own Instagram channels, your own following. Having said that, this has always been the case. It's really unfortunate that musicians really need cash, like they need money behind their music to have people listen to it. And we thought that the internet would be that space where it would become a level playing ground. But as it turned out, that's not the case anymore.
It's not that simple. I mean, becomes even more complex. And
Yeah.
since we are talking about, how digital has also changed the way music is made and music is distributed. How are you using digital platforms to engage with your audience? Is it an enabler? How do you kind of really leverage that?
I mean, honestly, I don't think I've leveraged it at all, or I've done it right, and it really intimidates me even today, because I don't have a knack for it. I didn't grow up with it. Even when we first started putting stuff up, because Hania was a computer science major, this was mostly her doing. So, I mean, I do have my music up on Spotify. I have, different kind of pages here and there, but it's something that I'm still learning. It's an exciting world. I mean, there are so many things that you can do with it. But honestly speaking, I need to do a lot more. And I can't claim that I'm good at it. Yeah, I'm not doing well.
Right. Let me also ask you about your experience of working in Bollywood. I mean, how was it like, working for some of the biggest projects?
It was a dream. I mean, imagine you've been listening to people all your life, or in college in your most formative times, you've had memories that you can't share with anybody, with somebody's music, and there you are, across the glass, and they're telling you to sing their song. It was really like a dream come true. It was somebody listening to a prayer. It was amazing.
Right.
And I got to learn a lot. I got to see the process. I was very interested in how studios were run, who was doing the work, who was doing which work, how a song is made, what the time span, everything is it's kind of hyper in
Right.
Bombay. So that was also very, very exciting and unlike our kind of laid back world in Pakistan.
Right. I also want to tell the audience that you are very actively working to reintroduce Khayal, South Asian musical form. What was the inspiration? How is it panning out for you? Well, and who are the audience? Where are they? Geographically, the lovers of Khayal.
So Khayal is it's a very, like this Healing Khayal project is very close to my heart. And the inspiration of it comes from my own learning. Because as you very rightly said, I didn't really have any formal training until I kind of had an audience. So, and then, being kind of from a non musical background, I felt that I must learn. So I was in the search for finding a good ustad. And that's around that time I found Ustad Nasiruddin Sami, who I didn't know at the time, but who is kind of, who sings the 49 note octave khayal, which is an 800-year-old kind of tradition, Sufi tradition, and all that. So when I started learning music from him, of course, my big thing was, how do I sing this jaga? How do I know about rags? How do I fix my voice? I want more range. Every single one, the single wants more range. And those were the things, the preoccupations that I had, which were kind of linked to technicalities and, things like that, to be able to feel confident in a room full of musicians. But really, like, as I started learning from him, I recognized that this practice was not necessarily just about music as much as it was about self-realization, self-actualization. And it was a very meditative practice that had been devised for your own self, and I just became a much calmer, much happier person over the course of so many years. And because shuru mein I wasn't allowed to ask questions, so I didn't ask those questions, but I kept pondering about them. And a few years later, he kind of started talking to me about how he wanted me to express myself. He's like, forget about what somebody else sounds like, forget about what, improvisation, self-reflection. Those were the kinds of things that I was being taught. And ultimately, the more research I did, the more I got to know him, I realized that I was actually sitting on this gold mine, of knowledge and learning, and nobody knew what all classical music could do and what its actual purpose was when it was created. Because right now, when I think classical music, I'm intimidated. It's like, it's like you're some heavyweight, right? And learning it, especially if you're not from a musical family, it's like they say all kinds of things, ke pahad hai, or lohe ke chane, and this kind of stuff I've heard, and I was so scared of it. Meanwhile, it seems something that can really give and nurture, the world. So that's where it came from. And these programs, these little programs that I can do, that I plan to do with these group of teachers, because they sing the authentic khayal, and they know these little microtonal, intricacies that bring out certain emotive responses. So all over the world, we're going to have small, short, kind of get-togethers or little residencies, where
Right.
students will come and listen and get to know their voice, and hopefully get the other kind of effects of khayal as well, apart from just music.
Wonderful project. And classical music also, of course, it has become super niche because maybe the genre needs to be made understandable to masses as well. Maybe it's an attempt to make that happen.
Absolutely. And, another thing is that I saw, 3 or 4 years ago, this Grammy Award winning producer came to my Ustad's house, and he made, a bunch of records with him. That was the first time he was being recorded. And, he was, I think close to 70. And so, and right after that, he started also helping him get onto international stages like WOMAD and all. And then you'd find like thousands of people who have no idea about the cultural, aspect or whatever of this art form, listening in complete silence for 2 hours or an hour and a half and feeling that effect in just one performance. And so, I don't think that this is really limited by context or where you're from. These are very specific and very, I think, sophisticated sciences of frequencies and emotions. And nowadays there's so much stuff happening on healing and music and healing and sound. And so I think that they were onto something at that time, which unfortunately we've forgotten. So that's it.
No, absolutely. I think there's so much of richness around us, and we need to look around and just discover it as you have been doing. Let me quickly ask you my last few questions. There's a lot of people, youngsters who are at the cusp of starting their career as independent artists and all, and looking at the complexity of the industry. What is your advice to young artists?
I would say, as much as you can, just stick with your truth, and that is the thing, and it's the toughest thing to do actually, because when something works really well or it feels really hard, we're only human. We want to change our perspective. We want to, we want to please. But really, ultimately, your time comes when your time comes. And when it comes, you must be ready with yourself, not with somebody else's perspective. So this would be my only.
Right. And finding inspiration, of course, in a creative field is often talked about thing. What inspires you to make? I mean, how do you find that inspiration when you are embarking on a project? Who do you look up to?
Who do I look up? God, no, just no. Who do I look up to? You know what? I think I'm most excited about the fact that, like, when you're in any kind of a creative person, like, you can really connect. You know, you can just communicate. You can say what you want to say. You can really just and when you say and when you say it very, like, authentically, someone else also feels the same. So I think I'm always inspired by the fact that I can reach out, and that's it. And otherwise, I just always look inwards and just feel how I'm feeling at that time. And yeah, it's very intuitive. So I'm sorry, this was a bad answer.
My final question, your message to your fans across South Asia, what would you like to tell them? Of course, they always look out for what is coming up from your side. First, let us know what is coming up next and what is your message to all of them.
So I have so much stuff coming this year, hopefully. I'm actually working on my debut solo album, which is done, and we're just working on some videos and stuff. So that's something that I hope that you all will really like. And then there's another regional project that I'm going to do, which I'm really excited about. So yeah, my message to them would be thank you so much for all the love and that kind of really catapulted me and brought me into this particular industry, and it actually really changed the course of my life. And thank you for it, and thank you for the love, and please watch out for the new music that's coming up.
Wonderful. That was Zabe Bangash on our show, Power People, where we featured the who's who of the music industry. Thank you so much, Zabe, for
Thank
joining
you.
us, taking out time from your busy schedule. I know you're in Dubai and you're working on our next project. Thanks again for joining us on this episode.
Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.